Hello everyone, my name is Kirti and I'm an assistant professor in ITM. Today I'm going to discuss one of the topic in business law, that is quasi contract. So in some situation there is neither agreement nor consensus ad item, that means meeting the minds between the parties, but yet the law imposes obligation on one party and confers a right in favor of other. For instance, a finder of goods is under an obligation to restore the goods to the real owner if traceable, and he must take the reasonable care of that goods. These obligations have been termed in certain relations resembling those created by the contract under Indian law, and they are known as quasi or constructive contract under English law. These contract are also known as implied in law contract. The difference between the quasi and real contract is that in case of quasi contract, the parties do not intend to create a contract. So basically it is based on the principle of equity. So I can take an example, like a doctor is driving down the highway and finds B lying in unconscious state on the right side of the road. He stops his car and administers the emergency treatment that saves B's life. Even if B, the victim, was not aware that the services has been rendered by the doctor, yet he received a valuable benefit. Here the requirements of quasi contract have been fulfilled and therefore B is under an obligation to pay for it to the doctor. If B fails to do so, the court can apply the doctrine of quasi contract and order B to pay A. That is, the defendant has to pay for the services to the plaintiff. Now move to, these are the features of quasi contract. A quasi contract is not a real contract. It is based upon the offer and acceptance rule. It is not based on the offer and acceptance rule. Then it doesn't arise any formal agreement, but it is imposed by law. It is a right which is available not against the entire world but against a particular person only. Now move to doctrine of quasi contract. So basically, number one is an unjust enrichment declares that a person shall not be allowed to enrich himself at the expense of the unknown parties. And second is quantum merit, means the actual value of the services performed. It determines the amount to be paid for services when no contract exists or when there is a doubt as to the amount due for the work performed but done under circumstances when payment could be accepted. Now move to types of quasi contract, which is given under section 68 to 72. So number one is supply of necessary to incapable person. So section 68 lays down that if a person incapable of entering into a contract or anyone whom he is legally bound to support is supplied by another person with necessary suited to his condition in life, the person who has furnished such supplies is entitled to be reimbursed from the property of such incapable person. Let's suppose A supplies B a lunatic with necessaries suitable to his condition in life, and A is entitled to be reimbursed from the B's property. Now move to payment by an interested person. So section 69 lays down a person who is interested in the payment of money which another is bound by the law to pay and who therefore pays it is entitled to be reimbursed by the other. Let's suppose A hold land in Bengal on a lease. B is the owner of the land. The land revenue payable by B to the government is in arrears. Therefore, the government advertised the land for sale to recover the dues. To prevent the sale of land, A pays the arrear of land revenue. In this case, B is bound to reimburse the amount to A. Now move to payment for non-gratuitous act. So when a person lawfully does anything for another person or delivers uh, anything to him not intending to do or gratuitously, and such other person enjoy the benefit thereof, the latter is bound to make compensation to the former in respect of to restore the thing so done or delivered. For example, A tradesman leave his good at B by mistake. B treat the good as his own and uses them. B is bound to pay for the goods. Now move to liability of finder of goods. According to section 71, a person who finds goods belonging to another person and takes them into the custody is subject to the same responsibility as a Bailey. Although there is no agreement between the owner and the finder of goods, the law employs an agreement between the two, and this section places the finder in the same position as that of a Bailey. So, what is the obligation of the finder of the lost goods? Number one is to take reasonable care of the goods as a man of ordinary prudence, which take care of his own goods. Second is to take all necessary steps to trace its true owner. Second, not to make use of those goods. And fourth one is to return the goods to the true owner if found. Now move to what is the rights of the finder of goods. Number one is to keep possession of the goods as against everyone except the true owner, to make claim for expenses incurred by him for maintenance of the goods, to sue the owner for the reward if any. Fourth one is to exercise the right of lion over the goods for expenses and reward, but he cannot sue the owner for these expenses. And fifth one is to sell the goods. So according to section 169, a finder of goods may sell the goods in following circumstances. Number one, when the owner cannot with reasonable diligence be found out. Second, when the thing is in danger of perishing or else of losing the greater part of its value. Third is when the owner is found out but refuses to pay the lawful charges of the finder. Fourth one is when the lawful charges of the finder in respect of the thing found amount to the two-thirds of its value. There is a case law, famous case law of Hollins versus Fowler. H picked up a diamond from the floor of F shops and handed it over to him. In spite of best efforts, the true owner could not be found out. After some week, H tendered to F the lawful charges incurred by him for finding the true owner and asked him to return the diamond to H. But F refused to do so. Held, F must return the diamond to H as H was entitled to retain it against the whole world except the true owner. Now move to payment of delivery by mistake or under coercion. So section 72 lays down a person to whom money has been paid or anything delivered by mistake or under coercion must repay or return it. The terms mistake and coercion are used in section 72 in its general sense and do not carry the same meaning provided in relation to free consent. Let's suppose A and B jointly uh, rupees 5,000 to C. A alone pays the amount to C. B, not knowing this, again pays rupees 5,000 to C. In this case, C is bound to repay rupees 5,000 to B as this amount is paid to him by mistake. Uh, so a quasi contract exists in the absence of a written contract and may be court ordered to avoid one party gaining at the expense of another party action. So basically, at the end, I want to conclude that the Indian contract governs the formation and validity of a contract in India. A contract is an agreement which is enforceable by law according to section 2H. The Indian Contract Act 1872, section 10 lays down in order to constitute valid contract. An agreement should have all the essential of a valid contract. It is an agreement which gives rise to a legal obligation, but in some circumstances, in the absence of an obligations, are created by law. So this is basically a quasi contract. So basically, uh, like we already discussed, that it is based on the doctrine of unjust enrichment. So Lord Mansfield, who is considered to be the real founder of such obligations, explained the doctrine of unjust enrichment for the first time in uh, Moses versus McFarlane. That law was, which is held in 1716. As well, justice should try to prevent unjust enrichment, that is enrichment of one person at the cost of another. So the case law which is held in 1716, Moses versus McFarlane, like the fact of this case is that A issued 4 promissory not to B and the later endorsed them to C. The agreement provided that B shall not be liable on the endorsement. Even then, C sued B on the endorsement, held B was liable despite the agreement. B was therefore compelled to discharge his liability, which was excluded by him, but he sued to recover back his money. He could get back his money under the law. In this case, Lord Mansfield observed that the gist of this kind of action is that defendant, upon the circumstances of the case, is obliged by the ties of natural justice and equity to refund the money. The law of quasi contract is also known as law of restitution. So section 73 of the act provides that when an obligation resembling those created by contract has been incurred and has not been discharged, any person injured by the failure to discharge it is entitled to receive that same compensation from the party in default, as if such person has contracted to discharge it and has broken this contract. Thus, it follows above. Follows from the above discussion that when the person fails to discharge his obligation arising out of the quasi contract, another party is entitled to exercise legal remedies as if the contract is broken. So that is all for today. Thank you so much.